The bouncer's massive hand pressed flat against Mike Tyson's chest, shoving him backward and growling that he was too small to cause any problems in this establishment. Tyson's eyes went dead, that old Brownsville darkness flooding back, and his left hand was already moving before anyone in the restaurant could draw their next breath. What happened in the next 5 seconds would become that restaurant's legend, a story whispered about for decades. The bouncer's hand hit Mike Tyson's chest like a brick wall slamming shut, and Tyson, 5'10", 220 pounds of compact destruction, stopped dead in his tracks at the entrance of a restaurant he'd been coming to for years. The bouncer, a 6'4", 250-pound slab of muscle and bad decisions named Gerald Harmon, looked down at the most dangerous man on the planet and said 4 words that would rearrange his entire evening: "You're too small." What happened in the next 5 seconds would become Lower Manhattan legend, a story whispered about for decades by waiters, bartenders, doormen, and anyone who was inside that building on a warm Friday night in 1995. Now let me set this up for you because the details matter. Mike Tyson had been released from prison just 4 months earlier. He'd done 3 years in the Indiana Youth Center, and when he came out, the world didn't know what to expect. Was he still the same fighter? Was he broken? Was he dangerous? The answer to all 3 was yes. Tyson at that point was trying to ease back into the world. He wasn't looking for trouble. Believe me, this is important. He was not the aggressor that night. He was a man walking into a restaurant to eat steak and mind his business. He had a reservation. He had 2 guys with him, his friend Rory Holloway and a trainer from his camp whose name doesn't matter because he didn't do anything the entire night except stand there with his mouth open. The restaurant was called Meridian, sat on a side street in Tribeca, back when Tribeca still had edge to it, before the hedge fund guys moved in and turned everything into a candle shop. Meridian was one of those places where you could get a $40 plate and still hear someone arguing in the kitchen. It had a crowd. Friday night, maybe 60, 70 people inside, jazz playing low, glasses clinking. The kind of spot where celebrities came to eat because nobody bothered them. Except tonight, somebody was going to bother Mike Tyson. Gerald Harmon was new. 3 weeks on the job. He'd come over from a nightclub in Midtown that had closed down after a stabbing, and he'd brought every ounce of his nightclub mentality with him. Gerald was the kind of bouncer who measured his own worth by how many people he turned away. The more names he crossed off the list, the bigger he felt. He'd been a competitive powerlifter in his 20s, still kept up with it, and he walked around with that wide lat syndrome where his arms couldn't hang straight because his back was too thick. He wore black t-shirts 1 size too small on purpose. He was strong, no question about that. But strong and dangerous are 2 completely different animals, and Gerald had never learned the difference. Here's what nobody tells you about that night. Gerald knew exactly who Mike Tyson was. He recognized him the moment Tyson stepped out of the black Lincoln Town car. He told the hostess. She confirmed the reservation. Everything should have been smooth. But Gerald had been telling stories all week. Stories about how boxing was overrated, how he could handle himself against any fighter because fighters only knew how to operate in a ring, how rules made them soft. He'd said it Monday. He'd said it Wednesday. By Friday, he'd painted himself into a corner. And now the universe had delivered Mike Tyson to his front door. Tyson walked up in a black silk shirt, open collar, no jewelry. Simple. Rory was to his left. The trainer was behind them. Tyson nodded at Gerald the way you nod at any doorman, a quick chin lift, nothing more. Gerald didn't move. Tyson stopped, looked up at him. Not with anger, not yet, more like confusion. The way you look at a traffic light that won't change. "Reservation for Tyson," Rory said from behind. Gerald kept his feet planted. He put his hand up, flat palm, right into Tyson's chest, and pushed. Not hard enough to move him, but hard enough to make contact. Hard enough to make a statement. "Hold on," Gerald said. "I need to check the list." "I just told the girl inside," Rory said. "We're confirmed." Gerald didn't look at Rory. His eyes were on Tyson. And that's when he said it. Not loud, not screaming, but clear enough that 3 people standing outside heard every word. "You're too small." Get this. He didn't say the party's too small or your name's not on the list. He looked at Mike Tyson, the youngest heavyweight champion in the history of boxing, a man who had knocked out 33 professional fighters, some of them in under a minute, and he told him he was too small. Tyson's jaw tightened. You could see the muscles flex beneath his skin. His right hand, which had been hanging loose at his side, slowly curled into a fist. Not a punch fist, a pressure fist, the kind you make when you're telling your body to stay still while your brain is screaming something else entirely. "What did you say?" Tyson asked. His voice was quiet. That famous high pitch that people always underestimated. But there was something underneath it now, a frequency. If you've ever heard a transformer box hum right before it blows, that's what it sounded like. Gerald made his second mistake. His first was touching Tyson. His second was repeating himself. "I said you're too small. This is a private event tonight, and we're at capacity. You'll need to come back another time." There was no private event. The hostess confirmed that later. There was no capacity issue. There were 4 empty tables. Gerald was lying, and everyone within earshot knew it, including Gerald. Tyson took a half step back. Not retreat, recalibration. Anyone who watched his fights knew this movement. He used to do it in the ring. He'd give you 6 inches of space so he could take back 6 feet. His shoulders dropped. His chin tucked slightly. His weight shifted to his lead foot. These were not conscious decisions. These were 30 years of training firing at once. I'm telling you, in that half second, Tyson went from civilian to fighter without deciding to. Rory put his hand on Tyson's shoulder. "Mike, it's not worth it. Let's just go somewhere else." Tyson didn't acknowledge him. His eyes were locked on Gerald. And here's the thing, Gerald saw it. He saw the shift. For the first time all night, his confident expression cracked just slightly. His chin lifted a 1/4 inch, which is what humans do when they suddenly feel less sure about their position. It's involuntary. You can't fake it, and you can't stop it. But Gerald was 6'4", 250, in front of an audience. Pride is a concrete wall, and once you're behind it, you can't climb back over without losing something. So instead of stepping aside, instead of saying my mistake and letting the most dangerous puncher alive walk past him to eat dinner, Gerald did the dumbest thing he'd done in his entire life. He put both hands on Tyson's chest and shoved him backward. Tyson stumbled. 1 step, maybe 2. His heel caught the curb behind him, and for a fraction of a second he was off balance. Rory caught his arm. The trainer froze. 2 women walking past on the sidewalk gasped and stopped dead. And then 5 seconds started. Count them. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi. In that window, 5 seconds, the time it takes you to read this sentence out loud, Mike Tyson did something that Gerald Harmon would remember every single morning for the rest of his life when he looked in the mirror. Tyson surged forward. Not a lunge, not a wild rush. A measured, violent closing of distance that covered 4 feet in 1 step. His left hand came up first, not to punch, but to parry. He slapped Gerald's right arm down and to the side, opening up the entire center of Gerald's body. This wasn't street fighting. This was craftsmanship. Gerald tried to grab him. His arms were longer, his reach was bigger, and every instinct he had said to clinch. He got his left hand on Tyson's collar. His fingers closed on silk. Tyson threw a right hook to the body. Short, compact. The kind of punch you feel in your ancestors. It landed just below Gerald's ribcage on the left side, right on the liver. If you've never been hit in the liver, consider yourself blessed. It doesn't hurt the way a broken nose hurts or a split lip hurts. It shuts you down. Your nervous system sends a signal to your brain that says we're done, and your legs stop working. There's no fighting through it. There's no toughing it out. You go down. Trust me on this. I've seen fighters, professional, trained, conditioned fighters, take a liver shot and crumble. They don't decide to fall. Their body decides for them. Gerald's knees buckled. His hand came off Tyson's collar. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He folded at the waist, bending forward, and Tyson caught him. This is the part nobody expected. Tyson caught him. Not a clinch. Not a setup for another punch. Tyson put his left arm under Gerald's armpit and held him up, kept him from smashing face first into the concrete. Gerald was 250, and Tyson held his weight without shifting his stance. 5 seconds. Done. The 2 women on the sidewalk hadn't moved. Rory's hand was still in the air from where he'd tried to grab Tyson's arm. The trainer's mouth was open. Inside the restaurant, behind the glass door, the hostess had both hands over her face. Now here's where this story splits from what you think you know. Tyson didn't walk away. He didn't go inside. He didn't let Gerald hit the pavement and step over him. He held that man up and leaned close to his ear. "You all right?" Tyson asked. Gerald couldn't answer. The liver shot had stolen his voice along with his legs. He was gasping, short little breaths, eyes wide, one hand clutching his side. His face had gone pale, not white pale, but that gray-green color that comes right before someone vomits. His body was trying to process what had just happened to it, and the math wasn't adding up. Tyson lowered him, slowly, set him down on the curb the way you'd set down a child who fell off a bike. Gerald sat there, bent forward, both hands on his knees, pulling air in through clenched teeth. His whole body was trembling. "I want you to understand something. Tyson could have put him in the hospital, could have thrown a second shot, could have landed the left hook that had separated 33 men from their consciousness. He threw one punch, one, and then he caught the man who disrespected him and set him down gently. That's not rage, that's control. And there's nothing on this planet more terrifying than a violent man with total control." Rory came up beside Tyson. "Mike, we need to go. Right now." "No," Tyson said. He was looking down at Gerald. "Get him some water." The trainer, finally unfrozen, disappeared inside the restaurant. Came back 15 seconds later with a glass of water and a napkin. Tyson took the water himself and handed it to Gerald. Gerald took it with shaking hands, sipped, spilled some down his chin. "You put your hands on me," Tyson said. Not angry, just factual. Stating what happened the way a teacher corrects a wrong answer. "Don't put your hands on people." Gerald nodded. That was all he could manage. Now let me tell you what was happening inside the restaurant, because this story has layers. Listen to this. The manager, a guy named Vincent Caruso, had seen the whole thing through the front window. Vincent was old-school New York. He'd run restaurants in Little Italy in the 80s. He'd seen things. And when he saw his new bouncer shove Mike Tyson, he didn't call the police. He didn't run outside to intervene. He poured 2 glasses of Barolo, picked up a menu and walked to the front door. He opened it, stepped over Gerald's legs, and stood in front of Tyson. "Mr. Tyson, your table is ready. I apologize for the inconvenience." He said it like nothing had happened. Like Gerald wasn't sitting on the curb trying to remember how to breathe. Like this was just another Friday night. Tyson looked at Vincent. Then he looked at Gerald. Then he looked back at Vincent. "He gonna be okay?" Tyson asked. "I'll take care of him," Vincent said. Tyson nodded. He straightened his shirt. The silk had creased where Gerald had grabbed it. He smoothed it once, then walked inside. Rory followed. The trainer followed. The door closed behind them. Gerald sat on that curb for another 12 minutes. Vincent sent a busboy out with ice wrapped in a towel. Gerald held it against his side and stared at the sidewalk. When he finally stood up, he was hunched. He walked to the corner, leaned against a parking meter, and threw up in the gutter. Then he walked away. He didn't come back inside. He didn't finish his shift. He never worked at Meridian again. But this story doesn't end there. No chance. Inside the restaurant, something remarkable happened. Word had spread through the dining room in real time. You know how it works. One person sees something, whispers to their table, that table looks up, the next table notices them looking, and within 2 minutes, everybody in the room knows. By the time Tyson sat down at his corner table, 60-something people were sneaking glances at him, pretending they weren't sneaking glances at him. Tyson ordered a porterhouse, medium rare, with creamed spinach and a baked potato. Rory ordered salmon. The trainer ordered whatever Rory ordered. Here's the thing. Tyson sat there and ate dinner like a normal human being. He cut his steak. He drank water. He talked to Rory about a fight that was being scheduled, about training camp, about some property he was looking at in Vegas. Normal conversation. Normal volume. No adrenaline tremor in his hands. No replaying what just happened. It was over, and he'd moved on. 20 minutes into dinner, something happened that changed the temperature again. A man at a nearby table stood up. Big guy. Not Gerald big, but solid. He was wearing a blazer, no tie, and he'd clearly had a few drinks. He walked directly to Tyson's table. Rory stiffened. The trainer put down his fork. Tyson kept chewing. The man stopped at the edge of the table. "Mr. Tyson." Tyson looked up, swallowed, wiped his mouth with a napkin. "Yeah, I saw what happened outside. Okay, that was the most restrained thing I've ever seen a man do." Tyson set the napkin down, didn't say anything for a moment. Then, he didn't know any better. That was it. 6 words. He didn't know any better. Not he had it coming. Not he shouldn't have touched me. Not I could have done worse. He gave Gerald an excuse. He handed the man who had disrespected him a parachute and let him float down instead of crash. The man in the blazer nodded, turned around, and went back to his table. Rory exhaled. The trainer picked his fork back up. Dinner continued. Now I need to take you somewhere else for a minute, because what Gerald Harmon did after that night tells you everything about what a single moment of humiliation can do to a person. Gerald didn't go home that night. He went to a bar on 9th Avenue, sat in a corner booth, and drank 4 whiskeys. The bartender, a woman named Diane who'd known Gerald for years, said he looked like someone had died. He didn't tell her what happened. He didn't tell anyone. Not that night. But over the next few weeks, the story spread without him. Remember those 2 women on the sidewalk? One of them knew a reporter at the Post. The busboy who brought ice told his roommate, who told his barber, who told a boxing trainer at Gleason's gym in Brooklyn. By the following Monday, the story had traveled through every restaurant kitchen in Tribeca. By Wednesday, it had jumped to Midtown. By the following weekend, you could walk into any gym in New York City and hear some version of "Did you hear what happened to the bouncer who tried to stop Tyson?" Each version got a little different. In some tellings, Tyson knocked Gerald out cold. In others, he broke his ribs. In one version I heard years later, Tyson threw him through the restaurant window. None of that happened. 1 punch, liver shot, caught him on the way down, set him on the curb. That's the truth, and honestly, the truth is more devastating than any exaggeration because the truth includes mercy. Gerald heard the stories. Couldn't avoid them. He was a big guy in a small industry. Every bouncer in Manhattan knew every other bouncer, and within a month, Gerald Harmon was the punchline of the most popular joke in nightlife, the guy who told Mike Tyson he was too small, the guy who found out exactly how small Mike Tyson wasn't. I swear this happened. 3 months later, Gerald showed up at a gym in the Bronx. Not a powerlifting gym, a boxing gym. Johnny Toccata's place on Jerome Avenue. He walked in, told Johnny he wanted to learn how to box. And Johnny, who had heard the Tyson story and knew exactly who Gerald was, looked him up and down and said, "You sure about that?" Gerald was sure. He trained for 6 months. Hit the heavy bag, worked the mitts, sparred with middleweight amateurs who weighed 50 pounds less than him and still tagged him at will. Gerald learned something in that gym that he should have learned before he ever put his hands on Mike Tyson. Size is not skill. Mass is not mastery. Being big makes you big. It doesn't make you dangerous. Johnny Toccata told me this himself years later at a charity event. He said Gerald never became a good boxer. His footwork was terrible, his head movement was worse, and his timing was what Johnny called post office timing. Everything arrived late. But Gerald kept coming back. Every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Saturday morning. He hit the bag, he sparred, he learned. And slowly over those months, something in Gerald changed. Not his body, his attitude. The arrogance leaked out of him the way air leaves a tire, quietly, steadily. Until one day he was just a big guy in a gym trying to get better at something he'd once dismissed. You know what that is? That's respect. And it took a liver shot from Mike Tyson to plant the seed. Now let me take you back to the restaurant, because there's one more scene that night that completes this whole thing, and it's the detail that made this story immortal. Tyson finished his steak. Rory paid the bill. Tyson never carried a wallet in those days, had people for that. They stood up to leave. Vincent, the manager, came over to shake Tyson's hand and apologize again. "No need," Tyson said. "Good steak." They walked toward the door. The hostess opened it. Tyson stepped outside, back onto the same sidewalk where 5 seconds had changed Gerald Harmon's life. The curb was empty. Gerald was long gone, but the glass of water was still there, sitting right where Gerald had left it, half empty, on the edge of the curb. Tyson looked at it, stopped. Rory kept walking for 2 steps before he realized Tyson wasn't beside him. He turned back. "Mike?" Tyson bent down, picked up the glass, and brought it back inside to the hostess. "This goes in the kitchen," he said. Then he walked to the car, got in, and left. Let me tell you why that matters. Why I'm telling you about a water glass when this story has a knockout punch in it. Because that glass is the whole story. Tyson didn't leave a mess. He didn't leave Gerald on the ground. He didn't leave the glass on the curb. Everything he touched that night, he put back in order. The bouncer got corrected, caught, lowered gently, given water, and excused with 6 words. The glass got returned to the kitchen. The dinner got eaten. The steak was good. This man walked into a restaurant, was physically assaulted by someone who was supposed to let him in, defended himself with surgical precision, showed mercy to his attacker, ate dinner, returned a glass, and went home. That's not a knockout story. That's a character story. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but Mike Tyson has done terrible things. He's been convicted of horrible crimes. He's bitten a man's ear off on pay-per-view. And you're right, all of that is true. I'm not here to make Tyson a saint. He's not one. He'd be the first to tell you he's not one. But people are not single moments. They're a collection of every moment. And on this night, in this restaurant, in this 5-second window, Mike Tyson was something that the world rarely saw him as, measured. You want to know what happened to everyone else? Vincent Caruso ran Meridian for another 8 years before retiring to Florida. He told the Tyson story at every dinner party he attended for the rest of his life. It was his closer, his showstopper. He'd save it for dessert, lean forward and say, "Let me tell you about the night Iron Mike ate at my restaurant." Rory Holloway stayed in Tyson's circle for a few more years before they had a falling out over money, because that's what happens in boxing. Everyone falls out over money. He wrote a book later. The restaurant story wasn't in it. Some things you keep for yourself. The 2 women on the sidewalk, one of them, it turned out, was a casting director. She told the story at a production meeting the following Monday, and it spread through Hollywood inside of a week. 3 different screenwriters contacted Tyson's people about optioning the story for a film. Nothing ever came of it. Real life doesn't need a screenplay. And Gerald. Here's the end of Gerald's story, and I want you to hear this because it's the part that makes this whole thing mean something. 2 years later, 1997, Gerald Harmon was working security at a private event in Midtown. Corporate gala, tuxedos, champagne, the works. He was at the front door, because that's where Gerald always ended up, at the front door, the place that had nearly destroyed him. When a black car pulled up and Mike Tyson stepped out, Gerald's face went white. His hands dropped to his sides. Every molecule in his body wanted to disappear, and for a moment he considered walking away from his post, walking down the block, walking until his legs gave out. But he didn't. He stayed. Tyson walked up. Same stride, same compact frame, same energy that made the air feel different when he was near. He stopped in front of Gerald. They looked at each other. 2 years of distance between them. 1 punch, 1 glass of water. 1 story told 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. Gerald swallowed hard. "Mr. Tyson." "Hey." Tyson's eyes narrowed. Not with aggression, with recognition. He remembered. You could see it land, the click of recollection behind his eyes. He tilted his head slightly. "Meridian," Gerald said. His voice was steady, but his hands weren't. "I was the guy at the door." Tyson looked at him for 3 seconds. 3 long, geological seconds where Gerald Harmon's entire evening balanced on a razor's edge. Then Tyson nodded. "You still working doors?" "Yeah. You any good at it now?" Gerald almost broke. His chin quivered. His eyes went glassy. He blinked it back, hard, and straightened up. "I'm better." Tyson studied him. Then he extended his right hand, the same right hand that had put Gerald on a curb 2 years ago. He held it out, open, and waited. Gerald took it. They shook. Gerald's hand was shaking. Tyson's was steady. And that's it. No apology speech. No dramatic confession. No hug for the cameras. A handshake between 2 men, one who had been humbled and one who had done the humbling. And then Tyson walked inside to whatever party was waiting for him. I found out about this second meeting from Johnny Takata, the boxing trainer. Gerald told Johnny the following Saturday at the gym, standing by the heavy bag, still in his wraps. He said he shook Tyson's hand and it felt like the end of something. Not the end of shame, the end of pretending. "Small enough for you?" That's what someone at the gala asked Gerald later that night, trying to be funny, after word got around that Tyson was inside. Gerald didn't laugh. He just shook his head and opened the door for the next guest. "If this story hit you the way it hit me, Do me a favor and subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell. That's all I'm asking. One click. Because stories like this are why I do this, and every subscriber means I get to keep telling them. Now I want to leave you with something, and then we're done. People ask me all the time what made Mike Tyson different from every other heavyweight. They talk about his speed, his power, his peekaboo style, the way he could slip a jab and throw a hook so fast that the other fighter was unconscious before the crowd could react. All of that is real. All of that is documented. But what made Tyson truly different, what separated him from every other destroyer who ever laced up gloves, was the control underneath the chaos, the decision-making inside the violence, the ability to throw one punch when he could have thrown 10, the willingness to catch a man who disrespected him, the instinct to pick up a glass and return it to the kitchen. Gerald Harmon learned something in 5 seconds that most people never learn in a lifetime. The most dangerous person in any room is not the biggest, not the loudest, not the one with the most to prove. It's the one with the least to prove, the one who's already proven it, the one who can end you, choose not to, and then ask if you're all right. Gerald looked at Mike Tyson and saw a small man. Tyson looked at Gerald and saw a man who didn't know any better. One of them was right. And it wasn't the one who was 6'4". That was the night a bouncer told the baddest man on the planet he was too small, and 5 seconds later learned the actual size of Mike Tyson. Not in height, not in weight. In something that doesn't fit on any scale. The steak was good. The glass went back to the kitchen, and the legend never stopped growing.